Hello and welcome to this Beam Me Out video for Paper 2 GCSE English Language, question to summarise. For today's Beam Me Out video, it'd be useful to have a pen, some paper and your 100% sheets. This video will refer to the Aberfan Paper 2 extract, which is available online if you'd like to look at that. And here's a reminder of the question timings for Paper 2. Question 5. You spend 40 minutes on. This is your imagine this response, focusing on your 5 different forms. Question 4 is when you compare the two perspectives. Question 3 is a how question. Question 1 is identifying those statements that are true. And question 2 is summarise, and you spend 12 minutes on that. And this is the question we'll be looking at today. So a reminder, for this particular question, we're focusing on Assessment Objective 1. Assessment Objective 1 is to identify and interpret explicit information and ideas, and then to select and synthesize evidence from different texts. It's really important to note that you'll be looking at 2 sources, and of course, considering 2 sources, you need to ensure that you look at both of them to fulfill the skill of synthesis, which is making connections and pulling things together. And here you can see your 100% sheet for paper 2. Begins with box A, which is a reminder of your question order. We then have box B, discourse markers, box C, D and E, which are our methods. It's really important to remember that for this particular question, we are not focusing on methods. Here's a reminder of each particular question. For example, question 4 is box F, then box G is tone, which links to question 4. Box H is how's the writer. Box I is find 4. And finally, box J is summarise the differences, which is what we'll be looking at today. So focusing on this particular box, we begin with the focus section. We begin by planning by underlining the areas relate to the focus of the question in each source. So we read the question, we then read the source, and we highlight the correct information. It's a reminder that we don't write about methods in this particular question. Then we follow the SQI method: statement, quotation, inference. We begin with the statement about source A, which links to the question. In source A, the writer. We then embed a short quotation or quotations from source A, and then we offer an inference. This implies, this suggests. Again, we don't talk about methods, but we make sure that the effect, the inference, is detailed. We then make a link to source B, and if possible, we repeat the stages above. So here we can see a sample question. Let's read this. You need to refer to source A and source B for this question. It's really important to note that you're referring to the sources in their entirety. Both sources give details about the places where the events occur. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences between Aberfan and London. This is worth 8 marks. So again, let's just take a look at that question. They're detailing that the sources give information about places where events occur. In Aberfan, a landslide, and in London, an earthquake. And it's asking us to write a summary of the differences between the 2 places, Aberfan and London. So what do you have to do? You need to look out for the narrow focus of the question. So remember, on that previous question, we're looking at the differences between Aberfan and London. So it's incredibly precise. Make sure you take note of the narrow focus of the question. You need to be selective with the evidence that you select. And you need to make sure you pick things that you can infer about. So if you're struggling to infer, that probably means that there is very little to infer about that quotation or references. So think very carefully about selecting with precision. And if you select with precision, you should be able to make an excellent inference. So SQI is our approach for this question. That's given a statement about source A, making reference to a quotation, and including an inference, and then repeating for source B. So to see this in action, you can see here the question reminded us of the differences between Aberfan and London. In source A, it was stated few people have heard of it, and it was tucked away in a Welsh valley. And in source B, quotation selected as colossal city. So with both of those quotations, it is very, very evident that we can make some really excellent inferences about them. So when you've selected appropriate textual details, you need to formulate statements in relation to each. Aberfan is a small village that few people have heard of. It's tucked away in a Welsh valley. So there we have our statement that Aberfan is a small village, and we've integrated our quotation into this response as well. London is described as a colossal city. It implies it's huge and filled with activity. You need to develop the ability to independently ask questions of yourself as a reader or interrogate the text when you're making inferences. So you could just ask yourself, when I look at this quotation, what does that suggest to me about Aberfan? What might I imply about this quotation? What might it imply about Aberfan? What does it make me realise about Aberfan? And here is an example. Aberfan is a small village that few people have heard of. It's tucked away in a Welsh valley. So thinking about those three prompts you can use for any source. What does it suggest to me about Aberfan? What might I imply? And what does it make me realise? Well, it suggests that it's almost hidden from view and would have been similarly forgotten in history had it not been for the tragedy. So far we have this. Aberfan is a small village that few people have heard of. It's tucked away in a Welsh valley. This suggests that it's almost hidden from view and would have been similarly forgotten in history had it not been for the tragedy. In contrast, London is described as a colossal city. Again, we're going through the same stages for colossal city. What does this suggest to me about London? What might I imply from this about London? And what does it make me realise about London? It implies that it's huge. London is huge. It's filled with activity. It's a place so large that it should be safe from a natural disaster like an earthquake. We now have a full SQI paragraph. Aberfan is a small village that few people have heard of. It's tucked away in a Welsh valley. This suggests that it's almost hidden from view and would have been similarly forgotten in history had it not been for this tragedy. In contrast, London is described as a colossal city. It implies it's huge and filled with activity, a place that's so large that it should be safe from a natural disaster like an earthquake. We would then look to complete a further SQI paragraph following the same model. Note that there are no methods here, yet the inference is detailed. And that concludes today's Beam Me Out video on Paper 2 Question 2 Summarise. You may want to re-watch this as you prepare for your exam.